Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello, can you hear me?
you can hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes, Pankaj, you're right.
Okay, so a very good afternoon to you all, dear participants, and I welcome you all to the Designers Day organized by the Meghalaya Development Community. I'm going to give you a welcome speech. So I stand before you today on this remarkable occasion as we gather to celebrate the art and science of design. So it is my privilege to welcome you all to the prestigious Designer Day event organized by the Meghalaya Developers Community. And today we have a pleasure of delving into the fascinating world of user experience and user interface design with two esteemed resource persons who will share the insights and expertise in this field. Design, as we know, it is a powerful force that shapes our world, enhances our experiences, and influences our interactions. It is and it is a creativity, innovation, and a deep understanding of human needs. Now, the user interface and user experience design, in particular, plays a crucial role in creating delightful and intuitive design experiences that captivate and engage users. To shed a light on the realm of user experience design, we are honored to have Mr. Thomas G. Money, a chief designer, services user experience from Bangalore, Karnataka, with a wealth of knowledge and experience in crafting emotional user experiences. He will guide us through the principles that drive outstanding user experience design. Now, additionally, we are also privileged to have with us Mr. Mbhalang Pakanteng, a user experience user interface associate consultant from Pune. Now, he is a maestro in the realm of user experience design. Now, with an exceptional eye for aesthetics and deep understanding of visual communication, Mr. Ambahalang Pakanten will unveil the secrets of user experience in everyday life. Now, throughout the course of today's event, we will have the opportunity to learn from these accomplished professionals and gain valuable insights and witness the magic that unfold when creativity and technology intertwine harmoniously. Now, the talk and discussion will provide us with a deeper understanding of the ever evolving landscape of user experience and user interface design and equipped us with the tools to create compelling digital experiences that makes a difference. Now, I encourage you all to actively participate and ask questions and engage in meaningful conversations with our resource person and fellow attendees. Now, let us embrace this day as an opportunity to celebrate the brilliance of design, foster connections, and expand our horizon as we embark on this exciting journey together. Now, on behalf of the Meghalaya Development Community, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our resource person, Mr. Thomas J. Money and Mr. Mbahalang Pakantan, for gracing us with their presence and sharing their wisdom. Now, I would also like to thank all the volunteers, the sponsors, and the organizers who have tirelessly worked behind the scenes to make this event a reality. Now, without further ado, let us embark on this exhilarating day of exploration, collaboration, and inspiration. And may we all leave here with a renewed passion for design, armed with fresh ideas and a determination to make the world a more beautiful and user-friendly place. So again, without further ado, I would like to request we will start off with the first session of our event, and I would like to request Mr. Thomas G. Money to take over the session.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Melvin, for the introduction, and I'm really honored to be here in this session to share my knowledge with you regarding design thinking. But before we do that, is it possible for each and every one of us to show our faces since we're having a video call? I would love to see each and every one of you, and then probably again we can, switch our videos back to how do we say disable your videos if you want to. But yeah, because the fact that we are here is because we are not able to be there, physically. Okay, thank you, Hanif. Thank you, Mbalang, and anyone else would like to dare, so to say, show their faces. Hi, Karin. Hi, Christopher. Alicia. Good to see you. Yep. And Meghalaya Deaf Community. Is that Krishan? Oh, okay. Joshua. Hi. Cool. So yeah, hi Praveer, hi Nam. Hello, okay, hello everyone once again. It's good to see faces, and especially on a screen. I thought with that era of COVID has passed, but then this form of communication still, lingered with us. Okay, I'd like to just give a short introduction of myself. My name is Thomas Mani, and I'm here from Shillong. I've been working here in Bangalore for the past almost 10 years. Okay, it's almost a decade of design experience that I have with Samsung. The full name of the institute that I'm working with is Samsung Research and Development Institute, Bangalore. So the phones that you see that are being launched, especially the flagship ones, most of the features that are being launched on those phones actually developed by uh, our teams here in Bangalore. Some of my colleagues, maybe some of you will be using your Samsung cameras for clicking pictures. Those have been developed by some of my colleagues. And maybe if some of you are using Samsung Wallet or Samsung Pay, those have been developed by some of us in my team. Especially here in India, we have taken some of the global features and developed incorporated some of the Indian features as well to be released for the Indian markets. There are other apps that I would love to talk to you, and show to you probably at the end of the, the presentation. And maybe so the focus of this presentation will be me giving you an introduction of what design thinking is all about, what UX is all about. And as we have seen, the relay of events, Emha will be taking us over the how UX is revealed in our day-to-day life, right? So yes, so I won't be dwelling into the practical aspects of it. I'll be dwelling more into the theory part of it, but then giving practical examples also as well. Okay, let me share my screen as of now. Let's see. Just hold on. Yeah. Yep. Uh, okay. Can you see can you see the screen? If somebody can give a response in audio, that'll be good because I'm using this one is in full screen.
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. Cool. So yeah, as I've mentioned, my name is Thomas, and the purpose of this talk is to bring to light what design thinking is all about. And my hope is by the end of this presentation, you would have learned and what design thinking is all about, and what are maybe one of the process that goes into incorporating design thinking. Okay, and I would also love to spend some time answering your questions. If you have any questions, if some of you are, I've seen the percentage of enrollment here. Most of you are students, most of you are developers also as well. So if you would like to know how in the real world how design thinking works, you can ask those questions. Okay, so I'll dwell in the design theory as aspect of it, but yeah, we'll try to finish it off as soon as possible. Okay, so now coming coming to design thinking in UX, but before I dwell what design thinking is all about, I would love to hear from you. Okay, anyone can speak out, unmute, and tell me what UX is. Can except for the designers in the room. Can anyone unmute and tell me what UX is all about? Anyone?
Is it about user experience when they come across the product that you have built through your thought process?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Yes. Yes, Hanif, you're right. Actually, UX is user experience, and who else? I can see Prabir. Yes, you're also user. Yes, you're correct. Actually, okay. I was about to ask. Yeah. Hey. Then thinking, which we all, I think, most of us are doing at the moment, trying to think what user experience is. But thank you, Hanif, and thank you, Prabir, for sharing your thoughts of what user experience is. User experience, UX means user experience. U stands for user and the X for the experience. And the term user experience have been many a times it has been misused. Okay, why I wanted to know, because so that we'll get out of the way, how to use, maybe not to misuse the word user experience. Okay, the way we experience the world, that's user experience. The way we experience your life, that's user experience. The way you experience this services, okay, that's user experience. And most of the time we limit ourselves, when it comes to screens, user experience, right? Apps or the websites that we use. But it's more than that. It's actually a huge system of everything. Okay, the most important thing about user experience is that it already exists out there in the world. Okay, user experience already exists, and our job as designers is where we bring in the best of that experience, to our users. Okay, a lot of people confuse UX design, with UX design. Designers, they confuse designers as creating new experiences. In fact, we are not creating new experience, but we are optimizing the already existing experiences, to give the best experience to the user. Okay, and how do we do that? We do that by observing the users. Okay, by observing their behaviors, the patterns, the habits. Okay, and designing to make the experience better. Okay, I hope we are clear with what UX means and But the next question that comes to our mind is what makes a great UX user experience. Probably Emha, probably in the next session, he would explain more what constitutes a great user experience. There are a lot of factors that actually constitutes a great user experience. Okay, but the three main factors that creates a great product, okay, the product that you use, or create a great UX experience. Okay, the three main ones are factors are it should be useful, the product should be usable and desirable. These are the three main factors. Now, it would be a little bit hard to imagine what it is. So, how about we dive into an example? Okay, the best example that I can give as of now, okay, one example apart from the hundreds of examples that are out there of great user experiences is this one. Uh, I'm sure I'm sure many of you have tasted Kisan ketchup, right? Uh, I'm sure all of you would be nodding behind your screens. I will not be seeing you. Okay. Yeah. So many of us have used design ketchup, and many of us have used the bottle version of the design ketchup, which is there on the left-hand side of your screen. All right. But many times, how many of you have suffered, irritating experiences while pouring ketchup on your favorite noodles? Let's say if you go to Please Bazaar or maybe even at home for that matter. Most of the time, we use bottle at home. We'll be slapping the bottom of the bottle, and at the end of that big effort, only a small drop will come out of the bottle, right? And unfortunately, for some of us, the whole bottle only will fall. The whole bottle of ketchup will fall on your favorite noodles, which will make your experience, very bad. Instead of experiencing good food, you would end up, experiencing sour or maybe hot ketchup in the end, right? Now on the right side of the screen, that's where a good experience is all about, right? The ketchup is being contained in this well-designed plastic container, and you just open it from the bottom and you squeeze it, and and according to your wish, okay, and then you can experience your meal in a very happy manner, okay. So that's a very good experience. And coming to those three factors that I've told you about, it's useful, okay, it's usable, and it's desirable, okay. If I ask you this question from these two choices, which one would you pick? And I'm sure every one of us would pick the right one, which is the squeezer, because it's very useful, it's easy to use, it's usable, okay, and it's desirable also as well when it comes to looks and the way you can store the the product, okay. So this is what good experience are all about. Now, just for us to maybe make you smile a little bit, okay. Would you want to use this bottle? Although it's written ketchup there, it's usable, right? I mean, it is useful because you can just press and probably ketchup will come. But is it desirable? I don't think so. It looks more like a soap dispenser, right? None of us would actually want to store ketchup there, and that also has grapes as picture. It doesn't, it's not desirable, it's not the first thing that you would pick up to store your ketchup there, and nobody would know also if you had stored any, okay. So that's why those three those three factors makes a great user experience, okay. So now, how do we design a great user experience? How do we design one? That's where design thinking comes into place, okay. That's where designers comes into the picture. Uh, there's a there's a quote by Paul Rand. He's a famous graphic designer. Design can be art, design can be aesthetics. Design is so simple, that's why it's so complicated. Dwell on the last line. Okay? Design is so simple, but that's why it's so complicated. To get a simple output for the users to use, the process that the process that designer has to go through, it's complicated. That's what design thinking actually, yeah, the process as a whole is complicated, okay. But then that's where the design thinking comes into the picture, to make that whole process desirable, or to make that whole process easy for any one of us to create a good user experience or a great user experience, okay. Design thinking, once again, it's not just thinking, it's more like smart thinking. If you take it backwards, it's thinking like a designer, okay. It's not to be confused, not the confused thinking, but more like applying your brains to thinking, okay. Okay, the jokes aside, now, as a thing design thinking is a unified framework for innovation, okay. It is an essential tool for simplifying and humanizing. I will come to the definition, okay. This design thinking term, it has been there since the 1960s, okay. This as an approach. It is slowly evolving since 1960s. And then as a concept, it's a way of thinking about solving problems, keeping the users at the center of the whole process. So how do you solve problems, right? While solving those problems, you keep the user at the center of the whole process, okay? Now, why I'm saying this, many a times we tend to approach a problem, or maybe we tend to approach the problem and then directly into the solution and end up with a really bad product, okay. But many companies also fail sometimes when they create these products, because their views are mostly business oriented, okay. It's mostly like how to earn money, how to earn good revenue, okay, without even thinking how the user the end user would feel like, or how the end user would use the product. Okay, so it's more like shifting our views from creating products of, for business reasons, and shifting this view from business reasons to the real user needs, and understanding what people problems really are, and coming up with good solutions for those problems. Okay, but before we go into what this framework consists of, let's take a look at this definition by Tim Brown, who is the president and CEO of IDEO. Now, design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit. Okay, it is an approach, and it draws from the designer's toolkit, which means there are different tools, which I will not be dwelling on much in this session, in this short time that we have right now. But yeah, the human-centered approach is one, is the core of design thinking. Okay, to integrate what? To integrate the needs of the people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. Okay, taking all these things together. This is like a real-world definition, if you ask, right? What design thinking is all about. And if you know, some of you may be using iPhones, and some of the experience that you use in your Macs, your MacBooks, and CEO of former CEO of Apple, he has this quote: "Many people make mistakes by thinking design thinking is what it looks like, but it's not actually. It's just it's not just what it looks like. Design is how it works." Yeah? So, what constitutes a design thinking? What constitutes this framework? We are going to dwell now. We are going a little bit more into the theory part. So I request you to please bear with me as much as possible. I'll try to make it simple. Okay. Now these are the various stages that constitutes of design thinking. Okay. The first one being empathize. Next would be the defining stage, the ideate, prototyping, and the last one being testing. Although if you go on Google and type what is design thinking, you'll find many definitions, but these are the core of what design thinking is all about. These are the core stages. Before this, you can add probably the preparation stage before even empathizing with users, and the last one will be implementing, right? Implementing your ideas after testing them. Okay, it can go on depending upon the uh, depending upon your need, your team's need. Let's say if depending upon the product of what you're making. But these are the four stages. Okay, let's now let's dwell on the first one, which is empathize. What do you mean by empathize, right? It's not sympathize, which is different. You just feel sorry for someone. The empathize is more like getting into the user's shoes, feeling what the user is feeling. Trying to use things, let's say experiences what the user is actually using right at that moment. You would in this step, you would want to pull out qualitative data. You would want to do user research, direct observation, maybe inquiries or diary studies, and understand what the user really needs. Okay, then the next one would be the definition of what? Definition of the problem. Okay, I would dwell this on the next process, and you would understand what I mean by definition of problem. Okay, but in this step, it's more like you know, uh, but yeah, in this step is a definition of problem. Why this design thinking is it's what to say, it's different from the other processes because of this approach, defining the problem. Now a lot of people like to think about coming up with ideas, just knowing that the user needs or the problems, they'll come up with ideas, but it's actually not the case when it comes to design thinking. Design thinking turns that upside down. It's more like understand the problem first, define what is the problem. Design thinking flips that idea on its head. It says let's come up and define the problem before we even consider the solutions. Okay, this is step two, definition of the problem, what a user need and what your teams wants to satisfy. So now that you understand your problem, it's where you head to the next stage, which is ideate. Okay, you ideate. Here you can generate crazy ideas. Okay, with different methods. And then Slowly, after you get lots of these different methods, you can slowly narrow them down and finalize those few ideas. Okay, and after finalizing those ideas, let's say, a few of those ideas, you prototype them. Let those ideas take shape, and after those ideas have taken shape, you can test them out. Okay, you test those ideas. How do you test them? You use a sample of users. You test them out, see if it works. And 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 the the, the beauty of the design thinking approach is that you can go back and forth, or perhaps you can even go in a linear manner, not in a linear manner, I mean, you can even go in a circular manner. You can empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and after this testing, you can even go further deep, dive in deeper with those tested ideas. You can empathize again, you can define again, ideate more. In that way, you will end up with a very robust idea at the end, let's say after a few cycles of design thinking. Okay. Now, this is more like an approach. Okay. Now, design thinking is more like an approach. So, in order to simplify our understanding of design, design thinking or design process further, there's a systematic manner in which this can be done. In other words, how can we describe design process? This is, in fact, the design process, the design thinking. So how do we describe that? One of the ways which we can do that, it's the diamond method. Okay. Now let's get into more, a little bit more theory again. But before I go in there, I would like to ask the forum here if if you have any questions in between, or are are you able to follow me at this point? If yes, maybe thumbs up. I'm looking at the emoticons. Okay, great. Cool. Okay. I think since every one of us, most of us, I think we were from Shillong. There's a saying that most our teachers used to say back in school: if you keep quiet, then I take it that you understand. So at the moment, okay. Cool. Now, what is that double diamond process? Okay, it's made popular by the Design Council UK. It's in UK, and it's called the double diamond. And many companies have adopted this process and evolved it according to their needs, but the core still remain the same. Okay, let me introduce you to this this process for innovation. Okay, now you see here the double diamond. Okay, it's basically can be divided into broadly four main stages. That is discover, define, develop, and deliver. And from these, you will actually see the resemblance, or the way it incorporates the design thinking. Okay, and why is it called? Okay, and at the starting point, that's where you will find the problem. In the middle, where you will find the problem definition. If you remember the defining the problem, and at the end is where you get the solution. And why is it a diamond? Okay, it's basically of this process. If you can follow the outline, it's more like the process follows a bit diverging in a diverging manner, and then at a certain point you have to converge that again. And oops, yeah, converge that again in that whole shape of diverging twice, so to speak, which is the problem part and solution part of it. That forms this double diamond. Okay, let's dive in deeper. What is discover? Okay, this phase of discovery is more like which involves these steps, or uh, these activities. Okay, at first, when you get the problem in design terms, we call it the brief. Okay, so we rip the brief. Okay, we basically breaking down the brief and trying to understand what the client want, or maybe what we want to solve. Okay, the, or what do we want to solve, what problem are we trying to address here. So we try to do research. Okay, we try to do research in this discover phase. That's where we do this research. Research, it can be primary research, where you actually meet with the users, go out into the field, take interviews, sit with a sample of users, or you can do desk research, which is your secondary research. You get, read papers, you read articles, you read, maybe find out what research has been done prior to solving this problem, what prior research has been done, which is lying out there. Okay, and then compiling all those data. After compiling those data, you know you'll get the insights. Okay, you'll form insights after analyzing the problem. You'll form insights, you'll form the themes, and find out opportunities areas. And there's also a process called the how might we. Okay, how might we is actually a whole process in itself. In the sense, like, there's a problem A. How might we solve this problem? Okay, how might we do this? How might we do that? Okay, there are different approaches. Okay, so if you see here, the discover part is where you stretch your arms and trying to collect as much data as much as data as you want. And then in the half of the diamond is where you define, where you start with a problem definition. So that's where you converge back again, and you find, you define your brief here. You define the problem, and after you define the problem, next is where you ideate. Okay, this is where you develop those develop ideas. You ideate as much as possible, and like I mentioned before, crazy ideas can be developed here. That's where the divergent method also comes in. Okay, so again, it spreads out, and lots of ideation, evaluation, and you ideate more. And after ideating more, you have a list of ideas, and at the end of that list, at the end of that list, then you start to build and test and iterate again. Okay, so you'll select those ideas, you define, you come down again, you build and test and iterate, and in the end you'll be left out with only a few solutions that you can test out again with the users. And if the solution is desirable enough, if it's useful enough, and if it's usable enough, you'll end up creating a good user experience. Okay, so now, this is the theory part. Okay, and what I'm going to share here is what we have done for the past 5 6 years. I started off in Samsung as a visual communication designer and graphic design, as a UI designer, where I will be shadowing my mentors, looking at how they create user interfaces for the different applications that there is. But what I'm going to show you is actually the different applications that I've worked in. So using the same processes, but using the same processes, but there will be a little bit of changes here and there, because depending upon your expertise, depending upon the amount of work that you have done in. The first one being Samsung Wallet. So we have designed this experience. Okay, we have brought in uh, the experience in which the user, has payment methods within payment methods and digital IDs, all within the same application. Okay, and probably in the future we will be bringing in um, car keys also here. So within one swipe, so one single swipe from the bottom of the screen, you will be able to access your Aadhaar card, your PAN card, and your driving license. You can pay your bills. You can do UPI payments, and you can even make credit card payments, just from your phone, basically replacing your physical wallet. Yeah? And we have also worked on, I'm also working on this project that's called Samsung Finance Plus, where we provide services for the user, who can't afford to buy, let's say, a Samsung phone or a Samsung appliance. This is a fintech application, okay, on how we can provide this basically a lending platform for our users so that they can afford to buy uh, our devices. Okay, this is one application. And Samsung Shop, which this is probably is an SDK. For those developers in the house would know what SDK is. So we made this SDK so that it can be plugged in into a different app called My Galaxy. Okay, so we have created from scratch the whole Samsung Shop experience onto an SDK and delivered this and delivered. It's actually went live during COVID, 2021, 2020 to 2021. We were able to make this from scratch within record time and with a good user experience as well. And the other applications that are there out in the market is My Galaxy, Samsung Vision, dynamic lock screens. So I'm actively involved in all these applications and a few others as well. Though I've written many more, but yeah, it's just a few others. Okay, so yeah, that's what design thinking is all about. And before I leave, before I delve with it, I will leave you with this quote: "Good design is obvious, great design is transparent." Many a times, why this quote is very important or is close to me right from the start where I started my design studies. Okay, this quote is very important to me because it really hits you and it makes you think why great design is transparent. How can that be? You may ask, right? Because most of the times if you see out there in the world the experiences that you have which are very smooth, which are frictionless, you won't notice them because they are actually good design. Okay, the experiences that you experience, the good experiences that you experience. But now when that experience has a flaw, you know when experiences has a problem, that's when you notice, okay, this design is there's something wrong in here. Maybe check out, they're probably in a website, while checking out it's taking too much time, and all those things when it comes to UI. And probably the other experiences when it comes to our bureaucracy, right? Well, filling forms and all those things, you have to go from one table to another. So the whole thing, we see the problem there. But if that system is designed in a manner that is very smooth, you won't be able to see you I mean uh, you won't be able to see that it's being designed, right? So that's why good design is transparent. Okay, because you're using it like without any trouble, so to speak, right? So I hope you have taken you have learned something out of this short presentation that I've presented. What is design thinking, what is user experiences, and how to incorporate the double diamond, which is a one process of how when utilizing design thinking. So now if you have any questions that you would want to ask, I would open this time. Although, yeah, but first of all, Melvin, I'll give this time to Melvin. Uh, do we have time for questions? Melvin? Uh, we, we can't hear you, Melvin. I mean, it's faintly. Anyways, anyone has any questions you'd like to ask before we go to the next session? What software tools we typically use design work? Okay, there are different tools which you can use, Carrie. So when it comes to graphic design, I'm sure everyone flock to Adobe Suite, right? But when it comes to UI design, we generally use, at least in my usage here, we use Sketch due to the because it's native on the laptop. It doesn't have cloud. We do not. I mean, Samsung does not encourage us to upload anything on the cloud because of the NDA stuff, right? But yes, there's Sketch, there's Figma, which is very popular when it comes to UI creation, And when it comes to research and all those things, there are a lot of whiteboard softwares that are there. Um, yeah, I've used a couple of them, but yeah, there are a lot of tools. Alicia Rinja, can you please summarize user experience again? Okay, user experience is basically uh, your day-to-day experience, right? Whatever you experience, and when now whatever you experience, let's say on your phone, okay, uh, that is user experience. So let's say when you experience something on your phone, let's say on your app, on an application. Let's take for example your contacts, right? If you say contacts, what is the main thing that a user would want? If I or no, so say not contacts, the dialer, right? What is the first thing that a user would want to do when a person wants to make a phone call? Okay, first thing, like let's say I would want to see the history first. Okay? Or maybe that's to make a phone call. And then based on that we have the keypad. Let's say if now I don't have any contacts, I'll create a keypad user. Okay, so that's basically the user experience. And how you make a great user experience is where all these tools that are there for the user to make one phone call are being optimized in such a manner that it does not create any hindrance for the user. Okay, so that's just a small gist of user user experience all about. Does Samsung have its own style guide like Google Material? Yes, Ibor. Samsung has its own style guide. We call it One UI, okay? And it's being heavily used since the launch of Galaxy S8. So One UI is the style guide that we use over and on top of Android layer. Okay. How do I get started in UX design as a beginner? Okay, first of all, okay, maybe Emma might want to answer this one later. But yes, if you want to start about UX design, probably start off by studying what design is all about. Okay, what are the different aspects of design, and do you have you know, the factors that would make you a good designer. Okay, and then when it comes to UX design, you need to study what your user experience is all about, and go up from there. Okay. Sanju Thapa. So how to be a creative, because when my client asks me to do some creative design but I can't find creative. Okay, so basically this is a little bit okay from the subject, but yes, how to be creative, this is what all designers actually go through. It's called, we'll have to keep ourselves updated, to read a lot, and to spend time on computer most of the time. If you want to be creative, the creative thing is outside of your computer, outside of your, go out, take pictures. You want to create, be motivated, watch movies that are beneficial for your creative senses. Movies that have great music. Yes, music also is one inspiration. Basically, gather good inspiration. Okay, to create creative designs. Go out there, see what are the good designs out there, physical installations that are out there in the world. Read, try to read good books. If you have good books with a lot of pictures, that will also tickle your mind to be more creative. And first of all, I mean, most importantly is having the passion to be creative. I think that is what any person would say. Having the passion, and then drive towards honing your passion. Okay, I hope I've answered most of your questions. But in anyways, so thank you for your questions. And if you have anything apart from these, do connect with the organizers. Probably they can share my credentials on any socials. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, and then yeah, we can connect from there. Yeah. Thank you so much. So over to you, Melvin, once again.
Thank you so much, Sir Thomas, for that wonderful sharing of your experience and also the guidance that you have given to all the participants. And we are really, really grateful to have you here in this platform to share this, to grace us with all of those insights and valuable things that you have just spoken about with the interface and with the experience. So, yes, thank you. Right away, we are going to go ahead and start the next session. So that is session number two, which in which the speaker for this session, for the second session, is Mr. M. Bahalang Parkinson, who will be giving his talk on designing experiences, unveiling the user experience in everyday life. So without further ado, I would like to request Mr. M. Bahalang Parkinson to take over the session.
Hey, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sampa. Even I'm from Shillong. So I have a little bit about me. I've been in Pune for maybe the last 7 years now. I've done my education here, studied here, but then I started working as a UX designer here in Pune for like last almost 2 years now. I have 2 years of experience. Um, So unlike Mr. Thomas here, who works with Samsung, my company basically we're a consulting agency, right? We work with multiple companies. So for us, we work with clients like IBM, Deloitte, Sony, a lot of and many other small companies. So if they're developers here, we even work with the Linux Foundation. We make the UI for the Linux Foundation of that. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how UX how there's UX in our daily life, right? So you might not know, some of you may have not noticed this, or some of you don't know about it, but there's UX in almost everything you do. Literally, from the moment you wake up, it's UX. To the moment you go to bed, it's UX. It's just, and the annoying thing about this is once you do realize it, everything is just bad UX. You know, like you're on the elevator, that's just bad UX. You're opening the door, bad UX. It'll really start bothering you a lot. And trust me, it has. It's been 2 years and it's been annoying me. So before you get into this, if you get triggered easily, keep that in mind. It's just going to trigger you every day of your life. So anyway, I'm just going to start my session now. Let me share my screen. Um, one second. You see my screen?
Yes, somehow we can hear you.
Uh, uh-huh. Let me just do that again. Sorry about that. What's wrong with my one moment? Something's up. It's not working. Just give me one moment. Sorry about this. Stop sharing. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Let's get started. All right, so design experiences, unveiling the UX in daily life. What is this? Right? What do I mean by unveiling the UX in everyday life? So when I was thinking about the topic to talk about this, there was a lot of things that was going on in my mind, and but I decided, let's take a different path from the usual stuff, I would say, right? And I would like to talk about UX less of it as a career, less of it as a process, but more of it as a state of mind. And so I'm gonna start with this from again. So since I'm saying in everyday life, I'm not just talking about our lives right now. I will be talking about UX from, let's say, the inception of the human being itself, the inception of the Homo sapien. Weird, I know, but you know, very realistic. Stay with me on this. Um, so even before the term UX existed, right? People were inherently following the same principles that we do today when we design things about keeping. So UX is all about users. They say there's a term called user-centric design. That's where we keep the user in the middle of whatever we are doing. So when as I'm going through this, I would like you all to keep the word need and change a lot in your. Just keep it there at the back of your head. The word need and change, right? Because to me, UX always stems from a need, right? That's your UX problem, and your UX solution is the urge to change. All right, so let's start with our first slide over here. I'm going to divide my presentation into three sections: UX from the past, UX in the present, and UX in the future. So evolution. How is this related to UX? So I was having a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine a few days ago. We ended up talking about the human being itself would have to be the best example of the UX problem being solved, right? From the Homo erectus, or maybe I think it was before that, we do not have opposable thumbs, right? We would have paws just like every other animal, and there wasn't a need for us to be able to hold things, to be able to grasp them in our hands. And that need was met by evolution when it decided to give us opposable thumbs. Now we can do things like thumbs up. We can flip someone if you want to, using thumb and some other fingers. But ideally, that's what I'm saying. Evolution itself is one of the biggest examples of how UX solution worked in from his, in the past, right? So now UX isn't just always about improving or adding new things. UX is also sometimes about removing things that we no longer need or that have become obsolete. So a lot of you here might know some. So raise your hands if you can move your ears, like voluntarily move your ears. This is a really interesting thing. No, you can't. All right. Anyone else? All right. Cool. I'm just gonna go forward with it. So the reason we can't move our ears anymore is because we have evolved to not have the need to move them anymore. Again, need change, right? So because we don't need them, it's become an obsolete feature for the human body. We needed them before because we were hunters. So the same way if you look at cats or dogs, you know how the ears are always capable of moving in every direction. That's because they hear sound coming from that direction or that direction. So as humans, before when we were hunters, we also had the same feature where we could move our ears. So through the course of time, when we became gatherers, settlers, and as civilization progressed, we no longer needed them. So human body decided, you know what? Let's just remove this feature. This is like Windows 98's feature. We don't need it in Windows 11. Cool. Um, so now let's shift from human evolution to maybe more practical things, right? Let's say, for example, the wheel. Now you maybe wonder how is the wheel related to UX? It's not. But how the wheel was used over the course of time again were a lot has a lot to do again with user experience and sorry user experience problems and user experience solutioning, right? So from the wheel, we have been able to create complex machinery, which sorry. So the evolution of the wheel, someone thought, you know what, this thing moves. If we add some grooves over here, we could create a gear. If we add a line like this over here, we cut on this wheel, we can make a pulley. So this has led us to invent even more sophisticated machinery, and this helped us honestly. It's more like it introduced us to newer things, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Now, after this, so you get the idea of the wheel, right? How it works and how it has evolved over the years and how it was a UX solution, or a UX problem. It was a UX problem, sorry. Its inception led to UX problem and UX solution with the invention of things. For the next section, I would like to talk about these two great civilizations of our time, the Mayans and the Romans. Now, here I'm going to get a little bit into some UX terms, maybe. So the Mayans used UX principles in their city planning. Right? The Mayans were known to have one of the most amazingly built cities and beautiful architecture. And how did they use UX principles for this? So for this, it is something called affordance. Affordance refers to the perceived or potential action possibilities that an object or an element offers to a user, right? It's about visual cues and design elements that communicate something to the user. Like this is red. Like so, an example of current visual cues in present time would be your traffic lights. Red means stops, yellow means slow down, green means go. That's a visual cue. No one needs to tell you anymore to stop just by looking at it, you know. So this is how the Mayans constructed their cities, right? Their cities were known to have been built in a certain grid-like manner, where anyone could navigate to any place they needed to go easily. There were visual cues everywhere that would tell the user that if you go in this direction, that's where you're going to go. If you go in this direction, that's where you're going to go. Now, this again ties up a lot with navigating a website, right? If you've been to government website, any government website, you know how bad it is to navigate that website. You're just like, where do I go from here? What do I click? That's just like bad visual cueing, or it's just an inefficient way to navigate a website. So that's one of the ways that the Mayans implemented UX principles in their architecture. Now, another fascinating thing that the Romans did over here is so the Colosseum. A Colosseum is an amphitheater where it would have been our our version of the theater or our version of the opera, right? People go there to be entertained. People go there in crowds, and people flock there to watch, one dude kill another dude, or maybe a lion kill another dude. I don't know. But how did the Romans use UX principles for this? So in this case, the principle that the Romans implemented here is accessibility. Now think about it. There would be thousands of people crowding to a single place, right? How do they enter? How do they exit? How does sound travel across the theater? The Romans thought about this and designed their architecture in a way that accommodates all of this. It's all about crowd management. Like how do people enter the Colosseum and how do these crowds exit in a very efficient way that will not hinder their entry or their exit. Cool. So next, I'm gonna come into the more. So again, we went from something as that as abstract as human evolution to something as vast as architecture and infrastructure. But now I'm going to move on a little bit to day-to-day objects, how they have evolved, right? So eyeglasses, how the how has the eyeglass? Here we have three. Sorry about that. Here we have three objects you see in front of you: a magnifying glass, a money sack, and a shoe. Right? How did how has UX solutioning helped in these objects over the course of the year? Over the course of the years, sorry. So let's go with the first one. The first one was actually supposed to be about eyeglasses. A lot of us wear eyeglasses, and we know that nowadays we have really sophisticated eyeglasses. We have bifocal lens, we have transition lens where if you go outside, it becomes like shades. You come inside, it clears up. But at, in the beginning, it was something as simple as a magnifying glass, right? So how has it evolved over the years? It's gone through different iterations. I'm piggybacking over what Mr. Thomas said. Iterate. So one thing that we always even say in our company is design is iterative. Keep changing it every time till you reach, and you'll never honestly reach a perfect stage. You reach a stage that where you have met all of your current requirements, and there'll always be change for more in the future. And so, yeah, one of the features I would like to talk about where it is user centric regarding eyeglasses would be blue lens. You know, so I never heard about blue lens until a few years ago when COVID happened. Right, so when COVID happened and everyone was on there, so maybe it was developed then, but then the idea of blue lens is to reduce the exposure of the light coming from your monitor, right? So during COVID, when everyone was at home doing online college, online schooling, online offices, it seemed like everyone had blue lens. So that's how they marketed that. Like this is something that the user needs. Their eyes are being strained because they are on their system for at least 8 hours a day. So why don't we introduce this to them? Like, right? Because honestly, tell me, before that, I don't think anyone, most of us really didn't know about what blue lens were. So that's one of the objects. So the next one is the wallet. All right, so wallets have come a long way. If you look at old movies about medieval times, they were just these sacks where people put their coins in. And if any one of you here play Assassin's Creed, you know how easy those coins were to steal. You just walk by someone, gone, right? So, but it has evolved over the years because again, security. Wallets nowadays we have the tap technology in our cards where you can just go in, tap on a machine, money gets deducted without even asking for a pin, right? It's scary, but then that's how it is. That's just the progress of technology, right? So nowadays we have wallets that have RFID blockers. This way, no one can just come in behind you and just, put a card machine next to you and scan your card without your knowledge. So this is addressing security and convenience for the user, right? So the other object is the shoe. Well, the shoe has always been, now we don't really think about it. I would say we really don't think about the importance of the shoe or how it really has changed, right? But the shoe has gone through, I would say, thousands of iterations of different design. We have shoes that were just made out of wood. We have shoes that were made out of metal. We have shoes that were just plain leather bags with a rope tied around your ankles, right? But um, over the years, with different user requirements, different user needs, we got these changes to them, right? So we have shoes for running, shoes for climbing, shoes for cycling. We basically have a shoe for everything that we need. So one of the biggest examples over that we would know is the Air Jordan, right? Why was the Air Jordan developed? The Air Jordan was developed because someone thought, I want to increase the performance of my basketball players. I want them to be able to jump higher. I want them to be able to land without hurting their ankles. Because the user, which is the player, was probably facing these problems, right? They jump to dunk basketball. but when they land, it just hurts a lot. So someone thought, why don't we add cushion to the shoes? And hence we have the Air Jordan now. So the evolution of the shoe is an iconic example of user-centric product design. The user was always the center of what they were, the center of who they were designing for. I'm sorry about that. Right. So now so this is how objects or things or phenomenons have evolved, have changed due to the need for the user to change. Right, the user was like, even though they don't know like evolution, we didn't know we want thumbs, but or we didn't know of the possibility of having a thumb, opposable thumb. I'm sorry, but then the body knew subconsciously, maybe somewhere, I don't know, something in our mind wanted to be able to hold something, and we evolved to that. And then again, all these different things like architecture, simple objects like glasses, wallets, and phones. I'm sorry, not phones, and shoes. Now I'm going to move on to UX in the present, right? How we've been addressing or been using UX in our day-to-day lives. So the first thing is basically websites. I'm a little bit sticking with UX as a creative, right? So we know we have something called responsive views or adaptive views, right? We, I would say maybe a few years ago, maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, there was no such thing as adaptive views or responsive views. Now, what are adaptive views or responsive views? Earlier, when websites were designed, they were designed to mainly cater to a desktop, a PC, or a laptop. Right? They were never made to work on a phone. So when the first phones came in that were capable of having internet access, of accessing websites and all of those, these websites are very difficult to access. It's a really small screen, and you've seen phones before. The screens were like this much, right? A really small screen, and we have buttons that are even tinier than that. So how do it was a big problem for the user because they could not even read what was written because the website was built for 1920, maybe not 1920, maybe a 1300 resolution, right? And so UX designers thought about, or maybe, yeah, UX designers. We thought, let's make our websites adaptive or responsive so that it will cater to all the different resolutions that we have. So now, and how does this work, right? So let's say you are on a shopping website, Amazon, and let's say even in this time and age, when you're accessing Amazon, you don't have the mobile view. Most people access shopping websites or any websites on their mobile devices now rather than on their dedicated PC or laptop, right? If you have a bad experience on your phone because you could not operate these websites and navigate these websites or even see what's written, you're just not going to buy the thing you thought of buying about, right? Just like, you know what, this is dumb. I'd rather go to a shop, see it physically, and just buy it, right? But because of how we have implemented adaptive views and responsive views, we can now see these images clearly. We know exactly what to do. We know that add to cart means this. We don't have to search for where it is. Like if it was a big resolution being viewed on a tiny device, you'd have to scroll just to find the add to cart button, right? So that's this thing about websites. The next thing I would like to talk about is something. This also I came upon this article very recently. Right, Twitter. It was a Twitter link that someone sent to me. That this person was traveling over Japan and she came across these things. So this is Japan's way of being better than everyone else. you know. So in Japan train stations they have these lines, right? Where if you're transferring trains from one train you have to go to another, how do I not get lost in the sea of people that are there at the train station, right? So what they've done is they have these lines that run throughout the station, throughout the different platforms that would tell the user if you keep following this line, this particular red line, this blue line, this green line, or whatever line it is, because it has text on it, you can read it. If you follow this, it will take you to the exact train or the exact station, not station, exact platform or the next train that you need to go. You will never get lost. So this, yeah. So that's this is the beauty of this is. I'm a little bit lost. Sorry. Yeah. So that's that. This is about Japan and how they have used UX principles again to help you because these are again visual cues. Red, follow the red color. You see, if you look at the image over here at the right, you have an airplane symbol, which means that if you follow this red line, it will take you to the train that's going to take you to the airport. And if you look at the other one, it's a train symbol. It says if you follow the blue line, it will take you to the platform or the train that's going to take you to a different station. Visual cues, UX, right? Another thing that I read that I didn't put in over here is how, so there's something again called accessibility, right? How to allow every user, how to keep in mind um, every potential type of user that might be using your product. Right? So when we, as designers, I think Mr. Thomas will know that when we're designing a website, we keep in mind on the color schemes that we use, the shadows, the effects for people who are colorblind. Right? There's three different types of color blindness. We always have to keep in mind for that. That's called accessibility, right? Everyone gets to use it. Now in Japan, and the same thing about the train stations or subways, what they have is on the floor they have grooves. On the floor, the tile itself has grooves for the visually impaired, people who can't see and who use a walking stick. They just follow these grooves to go to, and they know where to go because obviously they've been taught that this grooves mean you go to this place, this groove means go to the other place. So, sorry, let me move on to the next section, which is malls. Malls, again, now this is a bit of a callback to my talk about the Mayans and their how they used affordance in their malls, right? So the malls itself have been designed in such a way that it gives a really pleasant experience for the user, right? Each section of the mall, like you see over here, here it shows a blueprint where we have different colors. Different colors here could mean that these are different sections for different things. So if I, as a user, I'm going to a mall and I'm interested in only looking at clothes, right? I know which section of the mall where there are just clothes, or if I, as a user, want to see just home appliances, I know exactly where it is because the mall has designed their layout in such a way that everything is grouped together. Everything is placed next to each other so that we would not have to jump from I'm on the first floor, I'm looking for a pressure cooker, but now I want to buy a washing machine. I have to go to the fifth floor. Doesn't make sense because I'm here just to fulfill my kitchen needs and my bath, not bathroom needs, washing needs. Right? I have all of these in the same area or at least in the same vicinity. So that's how malls have been implementing this too. Now another thing that malls do is they keep the. If I don't know if you've been to these huge malls, right? But they strategically um, place their food court on the top floor. If you think about it, a lot of times you don't really realize it. But the reason for this is you're at the mall, you're exploring it, right? You start from the ground floor and you always go up. Now the moment you reach the top floor, you would be a little bit tired from all the walking, maybe a little bit hungry from all the exploring. What do you end up doing? You end up eating at the food court, hence increasing the business of the mall, right? Or but let's say we place it on the ground floor then. We've explored the whole mall. We're at the elevator. I mean, we're at the top floor. We take the elevator to go down. We are more than likely just going to go straight to the parking lot. Like, we might as well just go home. Like, our kids might be like, "We want McDonald's," and you're like, "There's McDonald's at home, or there's food at home," right? That means, um, yeah. So that's how malls also implement some UX principles of affordance, of directing the user's eyes to a certain place of importance, right? Now, after all this, I've talked about three things. Now, these three. I've talked about the past. I've talked about the present, and these three things. Now, I'd like to talk about UX in the future. Right? Does anyone of you here use ChatGPT? Right? there's a lot of developers here, so I'm guessing you guys use ChatGPT. All right. So ChatGPT is like this amazing AI thing, right? It's also a bit frustrating to use, but so there's this fear that recently there's a fear where people have been saying that ChatGPT will replace or AI will replace all of our jobs. In my opinion, not really. You know, instead, AI would be here to assist us. So that's where I'm going with this next section for UX in the future or the possible future, right? If you look at the slide, I have a big question mark because what is the future? Or if you look at the title of the page, it says AI 1 UI UX. Does that mean that AI will trump over UI UX? To this I say no. To this I say it's AI plus UI UX. You get infinite possibilities. You know, because AI will not be here to replace us. It will be here to assist us in all of our needs. I have been using ChatGPT a lot in my day-to-day work to gather some resources, right? So if I need to gather information about a certain company or documentation about something, I just type it on ChatGPT. I want this, or tell me something about this company and how it is. I get a whole list of it. Sure, most of it might be incorrect or it might be not so relevant, but that spares us the time of spending hours and hours going through each and every website just to find the relevant article, the relevant data, right? So and now the next thing I'm saying, my next point here is advance. What does that mean? How would UX, UI, UX change in the future with the help of AI? What is this advancement? So now imagine a scenario where, so for us, if there's any, I guess there are some UI, UX developers, even just developers themselves, right? Is it not frustrating sometimes when you try to gather requirements from a client? They will give you the most abstract description of what they want, and you're just like lost in like the possibilities of what they want. I mean, I once had a client ask me, so I had a background that was white, right? It's like white background. This is a wireframe. When I was talking to the client in a call, he asked me, "Can you give me a brighter white?" I'm just like, how can I give you a brighter white when this white is FF? There's no brighter white than this. He was still insisting. Because they don't, this is because he didn't know about it, but it's really frustrating sometimes to talk to clients and gather their requirements and get the proper requirements that make sense. So if we use UI, let's say, right, it's a possible future, I'm not sure. But imagine a scenario like where, so recently in an article there was something about Elon Musk developing a neural chip where we put it inside our brain and it does something, right? Now imagine we have some wearable device where we use the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning or machine intelligence to scan the brain waves of a user, which will in turn generate all of these brain waves and give us exactly what the user needs. This would really save us a lot of time in having these consecutive calls and having these consecutive feedback loops or nuisance loop, I call them, with the clients. All right. Now, our next possible scenario is where we adapt. Right. So again, this has to do with clients itself, right? In our day-to-day work, we make designs and showcase them to our clients or our stakeholders, and we give them a lot of different options, right? But sometimes even they don't know what they want, or they don't know how to express and say, ah, I like this, I like that, or I want some of this, I want some of that, make this and that. Now imagine we have, you know, the technology where we use facial expression, facial recognition, sorry, right? facial recognition paired with AI to look at the different expressions that this user has. This user is expressing as they are using this application. Because when you're using an application, if it's nice, you usually have you know pleasant facial expressions, and if it's bad, you're just always crunching up your nose, you're furrowing your eyebrows, you're just like, I hate this app. This would actually enable us to adapt our ways of our methods of working. We have something called user labs where we observe the this is a term in UX, a process in UX where we observe the user in their natural habitat, how they work and how their body language is, or how their facial expression is, and how they like or dislike using a certain software. All right, so this basically concludes what I wanted to talk about today. Right? I know it's a little bit different. I know it might not have been what you expected, but my whole point in this is I want you to think about, where else has UI been used? Sorry, UI UX principles has been used, right? I want you to start looking at everything around you um, in a way where you feel like I could probably change that, or I need something and I want to change that. Right. So this goes back to the question that someone was asking. No, I'll get back to that in a bit. I'll get back to that in a bit. So here, and if I kind of use the same um, quote that Mr. Thomas used, design is not what it looks like and feels like, design is how it works. He stole a thunder using it before me. But anyway, um, right. So this ends my talk about UX in our daily lives. So there's one thing I was saying. I don't know if you guys noticed something throughout my presentation, right? So there's something in UI. This is something that we always follow in UI UX, which is called consistency, right? So even in our workspace, where like if you're gonna make a mistake, make a consistent mistake. That way, it doesn't really seem like a mistake. It seems like a design choice. But if you've noticed throughout my entire presentation, there was no consistency in the way I presented my slides. My first section about UX from the past to the present, I used icons a lot. In my second section of UI in the present, I used images. But in the last section about UI in the future, I used bullet points, right? And if this bothered you, honestly, if you notice this and this bothered you, then well, congratulations, you were thinking like a UI UX designer. If this bothered you and made you feel like I would have done this presentation a lot better, that was my whole point. So yeah, that was it. So I would like to end this by one quote that I usually like to say is, let's change the world one UX problem at a time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbhalang, for the experience and wisdom that you have shared with us and the participants. And for participants, if you have any questions, you can fill in the message box or you can email yourself and you can ask your questions.
Oh yeah, sorry. I remember that one question that someone was asking. How do you start a career as a UX designer, right? You just, I would say the way to start is you want to change things. You want to change things and you want to make it better, especially in the tech world. So that was the reason I joined UI UX, is because there were things that I used, there was applications that I used, I just did not like. That was how I started. It could be different for you. So maybe if you really want to get into this, you could start with an internship at some designing firm somewhere, or look at a lot of YouTube tutorials. It's there. It explains you all of the basics of how to get started with UI and UX. Any other questions? And if you're saying something, you're not really on. Right, so one of the questions here says, what are the jobs one can get with UI UX certification? This doesn't really, so getting a UI UX certification doesn't really guarantee you a job, I would say. There are a few that really would, but these are really high level certifications. But something that's available online at the most will tell your employers that maybe this person knows something about this. But whether you get the job or not depends entirely on how your interview goes or how your actual real world knowledge is. CUIs, I'm not saying they're bad for you or you shouldn't do it. They're good. You can do them, but don't depend on them to get a job. The next question is, what do you enjoy most about being a graphic designer? I'm actually not a graphic designer. I'm a UI UX designer. But another thing I do on the side is I cosplay. Because you know what cosplay is. I cosplay a lot.
Nice.
Look, there's one question here. How did you actually get into this field? Do you think we should both answer this?
Yeah,
Thomas?
you can go ahead. Amna.
Yeah,
I'll-
so I'll give mine and you give yours maybe, because mine was very funny. I did not know what UI UX was until a day before my interview. I really did not. So what happened was I was in my final years of my final semester of my master's, and I had to do a 6 months internship somewhere. Right. So when I was doing my bachelor's, when I was done with graduation, I remember a couple of friends of mine were doing their BCA. They went for UI UX. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just make a profile in this one app for UI UX also? I had three different profiles. Game development, and UI UX. So one of the recruiters contacted me saying, "Are you interested in doing UI UX as a career, or just doing as an internship?" I was like, "Why not? I need a 6 month certificate anyway, right, for my college, and I didn't plan on sticking on this field. But the moment I got into this, it was just like fish in the water. I just knew exactly what needed to be done. It just felt really comfortable for me to do it Mr. Thomas, how did you get into UI UX?
I started off as a graphic designer, but yeah, I mean, I went to design school and I thought I'll be doing more work into visual communication. That's when Samsung came in and I got into this field of UI UX. But even then, like that's also a part when it comes to UI. That's also a part of visual communication, how people interact visually on screens. So that actually, I mean, I got involved in that way. Otherwise, when it comes to design studies as such, I was interested because some of my I mean, even my interests were a little bit different. Although I studied to become a coder, basically a computer engineer, which I am. But I never learned, or maybe I never caught up with coding. I will always miss that semicolon at the end of each line, and it will take me hours to decode or decode that one semicolon at the end. But I managed to pull off that because my interfaces were good. At least the front end, was very good in that way. So it motivated me. Maybe I should stick to the making user interfaces and maybe not coding. So I found out ways on how to develop that skill, and then that's where design studies came in. And after that, this job really pushed me at this point. How did does color combinations have an impact on UX UI? Yes, a lot. It is plays an important role. So if you're starting into this, justify, I would say learn color theory. Okay, study about color theory and how different colors interact with each other. Because by doing so, you would be able to choose the right colors for your interface, and then also study more about colors in terms of the different cultures around the world. Different cultures take different. I mean, they interpret colors differently. Let's say if you're making a global app or anything that affects other regions of the world, you might also want to study how do they interact with colors. Because in certain areas, for example, in Japan or other Southeast Asian countries where green is actually a negative connotation. So that was came in as a surprise. I mean, I just came to know this past few weeks we were doing the study with other cultures as well. So green, man, it's negative because many a times it's either red or bright orange that would be alarming for us. Right? But no, it's green. So yes, color plays a good this one, role in UI UX when it comes to UI UX. And you would have seen from Mphalang's example also when it comes to Japan metro system, they've used color really well.
I have a really good example for the importance of color combination here, but I'll be really nitpicky about this, and I hope whoever designed our posters does not hate me for this. I'm sorry, but when I showed my friends the poster, they all mentioned this, right? I'm just going to share my screen for a little bit. Um, if you notice, can you see my screen?
It's loading.
If you notice here where the text says speaker, this color that we use, this was like a very bad combination given the background of the brown mountains or this. It has a little bit of a pink hue in it, right? So a lot of them were like saying we couldn't read that properly. So yeah, that's where I'm being a little bit nitpicky, but yeah, a good example of using the right colors in the right places really does have a huge impact.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bahalang, for the insight. And also, yes, I myself am I am a developer, but a very bad user interface designer. So yes, to seeing your work, having uh, gained all those ideas from you has really inspired me, and not just me, but I hope all the participants who have attended this particular event. So, on behalf of the Meghalaya Development Committee, I really want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to both our resource persons. So I would like to request Mr. Krishanang Adhikar to kindly present the token of appreciation to our resource person. So the token of appreciation to our resource person. Can we have that Krishan on the screen? So as a token of appreciation, I would like to thank both of you for the time and the dedication that you have given to our podcast this afternoon. So yes, definitely we are going to deliver these to you. So on behalf of the community, we are really grateful to have both of you in this podcast. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Malcolm,
Thank you a lot for this opportunity.
and the whole of Meghalaya community. Yeah, you can
So
send
again,
this one. I can download immediately.
so yeah, definitely we will be sending these along with a hard copy.
You can send mine to Molai.
So again, yes, definitely. And also the same goes for the participants. We will be sharing with you all the feedback forms. So we would request you all to kindly fill in the request form for which we will be distributing the certificate of participation to you all. So again, I would like to request Mr. Krishana Adhikar to deliver the vote. Thanks. Hello everyone. So I'm actually here with I'm the first and the Melvin Complex. So I'll be giving the vote of thanks. So first of all, I'd like to thank all our speakers that we have given covered the presentation for today and
Uh,
all the participants.
it's not that clear. Can you hold the mic closer to yourself?
Like, hello, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, sorry. So actually, I'm here with Melvin only. Melvin is outside because I'm I'm inside. And inside is a bit crowded. I'll just give the vote of thanks now. So very big thank you to our two speakers today that have presented their speech and their topic. So I'd like to thank all the participants who have joined us and also the core members, especially Justify, who have contacted all the participants, and then Dyson, who have helped us with design, and Christopher also with the certificate. So a big thank you to everyone. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yes, thank you so much, Krishan. So again, I would like to remind our participants that if you have any questions, you can fill in your questions in the feedback form itself, for which those questions we can relay back to our resource person. So yes, thanks again to one and all, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.